Thank you for joining me on my learning journey. Today I'm going to be going over some revising and editing tips. So this first one is one that you can do if you're not in a testing or a competitive environment, and that's reading your essay out loud. Because what happens when you're just reading it is your brain tends to automatically fix small grammatical errors. And also when you're reading it out loud, at least I feel like when I hear my essay, I can kind of tell if there's something wrong with the flow of the paragraph, and you'll realize, oh, this paragraph is a little choppy. The ideas in it don't really mix well together, and that can help you revise your essay better. Now, if you're in a testing or competitive environment, you're not going to be reading your essay out loud like this. Especially if you're doing something like ready writing or things like that, sometimes you won't be able to do this. But yeah, if you are able to do this, say it's for homework or you're just writing an essay on your own at home, then this might be something you want to try. Number 2 is, I always like to do it this way, is revise, then edit, then come back to revising with fresh eyes if needed. So why do we edit after revising? Well, we edit after revising because when you revise, you might be moving around sentences, adding sentences, deleting sentences, and then you edit because you would have added sentences and you need to check for things to edit in those sentences. And once you remix your sentences, are there any things you need to change in terms of grammar and things like that? This one is huge. Refer back to the prompt, because when you're doing your rough draft, it's just a flow of ideas, right? It's just all those ideas getting onto paper, and sometimes you start going off on one path, and then that path leads to another path, and then that path leads to another path, and then when you look at it, it's addressing a completely different thing than your prompt. So if you have a prompt, refer back to the prompt and make sure that your ideas are tying back to the prompt. Now, you want to do this when you're brainstorming and when you are kind of creating your plan, your outline for your essay, but you also want to go back and do it during revising, and making sure that the bits of your essay work well with the prompt. And if you need to delete anything or any pieces of irrelevant information and things like that. Number 4, consider the tone and the tense and things like that. This also has to do with referring to the prompt. I'm not going to go over this that much, but just something to just remind yourself, think about your tone and your tense and what they're asking you to do in the prompt. And also look for consistency in this. Make sure you're using the same tense throughout your entire essay. That's something that I have messed up with in the past. Number 5, keep aside time for revising and editing. If you're doing a test or a competition, keep aside a large portion of time for revising and editing. So keep a good chunk of time for brainstorming. Keep another a little smaller, but not very small, chunk of time for rough draft. Keep a large chunk of time for revising and editing, and then a smaller chunk of time for transferring your revised and your edited essay onto your final draft. Number 6, don't be afraid to get your rough draft messy. There will be times when you have to make major changes, and don't be afraid to make those changes. Just keep a page aside for the final draft. And if you're using a red pen, don't be afraid to get that red ink on your page and, edit, try stuff out, see if it works, try moving sentences around. Just don't be afraid to try experimenting with different sentence structures. And of course, paragraph flow as well. So that's it for this learning. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found these tips useful. And I'll really appreciate it if you leave your comments, feedback, and further suggestions for additional learnings below. I'll see you in the next video.